Progressive presents The Sounds of the Old World. The year is 2019, and someone is getting up to use the bathroom at the stadium.
Excuse me? Excuse me? Oh, sorry. Excuse me? You mind if I just squeeze by here?
This has been The Sounds of the Old World. Brought to you by Progressive, where drivers can still switch and save like it's 2019.
Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
It is 10 a.m. in the East, 7 a.m. out there in lost wages, but if you're a client of OffshoreInsiders.com, it's winning wages, Nevada, and 8 a.m. in Costa Rica, home of SportsbookReview.com. Here it is, the world-famous tailgate party. I'm Joe Duffy of OffshoreInsiders.com, and remember, this traces back to the old score phone days when a journeyman handicapper who went by the name of Chris Jordan at the time, now calls himself Oscar Dooley, and I started this concept on the score phones and kept it alive on YouTube and some podcasts, and now we do it Facebook Live in conjunction with spectacular website Sportsbook Review, where you can get the latest odds at their SBRodds.com and more. Let's get straight into some of these news and notes for Saturday. Nevada and Colorado State. Jackson Kincaid, Nevada running back, is questionable with a knee injury. He's got 50 carries for 268 yards and 11 receptions so far. Middle Tennessee State and UAB. Middle Tennessee State wide receiver Richie James is questionable. He missed 3 games so far, 19 catches for 206 yards after 213 combined catches the previous 2 years. So if he plays, that's big. Also, quarterback Brett Stockstill is still questionable for Middle Tennessee State. He has over 7,700 career yards passing and 6 touchdowns. Auburn and LSU. LSU star running back Darius Geis is probable. Just 364 yards this year on 4.4 yards per carry after 1,387 and 7.6 yards per carry last year. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Offshore Insider. Twitter limits you for characters, so there is no S at the end, although the website is Offshore Insiders. Auburn, well, we talked about that. Rutgers and Illinois. Rutgers, their wide receiver, Janarian Grant, is expected to return. This is pretty big. He might sneak under the radar. Had 11 catches in his first 2 games and another in the third game before getting hurt, but he's one of Rutgers' few offensive weapons. Old Dominion versus Marshall. ODU starting running back Ray Lowry, who had 5 carries for 44 yards in the opener to Albany before getting hurt. He returns. This is another pretty big one, as his first 3 years he had 947, 1136. Especially the past 2 years he's been very good. He's a very good running back, to say the least. So Ray Lowry returning is no small piece of note for the bettors. Missouri versus Georgia. Missouri, the second worst against the spread margin in the nation at minus 16.4. They are 1-4 against the spread. Some of you may know that as the sweat barometer. And, remember, you want to check those latest odds. Well, we don't want to do that. Let's get back to that. Yeah. Had my messages there. All right, let's get out of those messages, but did want to show you the SBRodds.com, and that is the place to go for the latest line news. There we go. So make sure you check that out. That is OffshoreInsiders.com, but also check SBRodds.com, which is tremendous to go for all the latest line moves. And once the games get underway, you will see the scores pop up there. So make sure you check out SBRodds.com. And if you do like this free information we're giving you, please literally like us on Facebook. That will help us with exposure. If you're watching the rebroadcast on if you're watching the rebroadcast on YouTube, remember you can join us every Saturday and Sunday on Sportsbook Review's Facebook page. Missouri and Georgia, the second worst against the spread margin in the nation at minus 16.4. BYU and Mississippi State. BYU, they're the only 0-6 against the spread team in the nation. They have a minus 13.6 against the spread margin, or sweat barometer, as some of you might call it. or have heard it elsewhere. Northern Illinois versus Buffalo. Buffalo is the only 6-0 spread team in the nation, though by it's a mere 6.1 points per game. So essentially, they are covering fairly close games. So what the sweat barometer will say is that Buffalo isn't quite as good as their spread record would indicate. Akron versus Western Michigan. Western Michigan, the top over team in the nation, going over 5-1 by 20.3 points per game. Yet Akron is just one of two games two teams that have gone under all 6 games this season by an average of minus 9.8. Now this is big. Western Michigan, 2 of their key running backs. Jamari, their running back, Jamari has been upgraded to probable. He's got 2,400 career rushing yards, including 394 this year, 4.9 yards per carry. Fellow running back Levante Bellamy is also expected to play. He's averaging a stunning 8.3 yards per carry, 357 yards this season, 7 catches for 54 yards. And also, let's see, Eastern Michigan and Army. Eastern Michigan, the top under team in the nation, under 5-0 by 17.6. And again, let me practice what I preach. I do ask you to like us on Sportsbook Review, and I'm going to like it myself. So that helps us with the exposure. Eastern Michigan and, Kansas and Iowa State. Kansas, the only team to go over every game this year by an average of 11.5 points per game. They've gone over all 5. Kansas running back Khalil Herbert is a game-time decision. 68 carries for 503 yards, 7.4 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns. Cincinnati versus South Florida. USF is leading the nation at 90 snaps per game. And as I say many times, when it comes to handicapping totals, it's a lot more about pace than it is offensive or defensive competence. Florida State versus Duke. Duke is second in the nation in snaps per game at 89. Miami of Ohio versus Kent. Kent, dead last in yards per play on offense at 3.5. Next worst team, 3.9. So that just tells you how bad of an offense Kent has. And Kent's starting quarterback, Gus Ragland, is out. He's got 12 touchdown passes this year, 4 interceptions after 20 touchdown passes last year, and just 1 interception. So, again, Kent, it'll be interesting to see how they can get much of an offense. Billy Ball gets the start after going 8 out of 17 last week, no touchdowns or no interceptions. Michigan versus Indiana. Michigan, the top defense based on yards per play, allowing just 3.4. Michigan running back L.J. Scott is questionable. 58 carries for 215 yards after 994 and 699 yards rushing the past 2 years. He did miss the last 2 games. Fellow running back Gerald Holmes is also questionable. 38 carries for 132 yards. He did miss last week, just under 1,000 yards the previous 2 years combined at 4.8 yards per carry. Now, fading Michigan fits into one of our bubble burst angles. Not every time that the bubble burst applies is it a premium play, but essentially teams coming off of their first losses under certain circumstances are good to bet against. In fact, this is one of our better ones. It's on a 24-1-2 run. Not quite a premium play because we had a little bit of conflicting information, but certainly a free pick is on Indiana plus the 8. Premium plays are at offshoreinsiders.com. Houston versus Tulsa. Tulsa allowing a nation's worst 8.1 yards per play. Second worst team. Kansas allows 7.6. Houston wide receiver Linnell Bonner upgraded to questionable, 32 catches for 300 yards, 98 receptions last season. He did miss last week's game to SMU. By the way, I always say when it does come to whether the single most underrated statistic or fact is the wind speed. More important than precipitation, unless we're talking about an absolute downpour. But the winds are at 19 miles per hour. Utah and USC. Deontay Burnett, Utah or a USC wide receiver is probable, despite being very limited in practice. 41 receptions for 527 yards. Utah, a little bit of a bubble burst team, really the verse of USC last week. Remember, we did have Oregon State last week, part of an 8-1 Saturday. I don't know if I'm going to be that great today, but now the situation's reversed. The bubble burst would say to actually go with USC. USC's 5-1 straight up, yet 1-5 against the spread. And I do have the honor of being on a USC, fantastic USC podcast every week, and we talked about this. The host, Ryan Abraham, has said, he noticed it's the same thing. And as I said, this is what I call my dichotomous straight up and ATS theory. Essentially, when a team is covering but not winning straight up, you usually go with the ATS run there. Now, of course, or also the reverse can be true if a team has a bad straight up record but a good ATS record. That says that they are undervalued. And we really use that a little bit more in the NBA than anything else. Quite frankly, it's weighed a little bit more in the NBA than it is in college football. And over the years, we've kind of moved it down. It's more of corroborating data. I know that you might say, well, okay, you just conflict it with the information you just gave. Although here at the Tailgate Party, we report. You decide. But it does fit into our dichotomous straight up and ATS theory. We also talked about on that podcast, one of my many media appearances I do, USC long snapper Damon Johnson is questionable with back problems. He is in concussion protocol. Look, the long snapper, arguably the most underrated player on the team. Late breaking intel, looks like Utah quarterback Tyler Huntley has been downgraded to doubtful. Heck of a quarterback, 966-yard passing, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. But Sam Darnold, again, 12 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He was the leading candidate. He was the odds-on favorite at just about all the sports books at SBRodds.com at the beginning of the year. As far as the Heisman Trophy, yes, you can, of course, bet on the Heisman Trophy winner. Make sure you visit Sportsbook Review for the best sports books. Sportsbook Review, without question, the number one watchdog in the world when it comes to offshore sports books. East Carolina versus Central Florida. Central Florida 4-0 against the spread with the nation's best, 23.1 against the spread margin. Now, some people would say that UCF could use the style points here to impress the pollsters. All these, especially with the 2 upsets last night, you had Washington State go down, Clemson go down. Yeah, that was an actual loser. We win a lot more than we lose at offshoreinsiders.com, Joe Duffy's picks, but we did lose last night with Clemson. These non-Power 5 teams, they have reason to believe they could sneak into the national championship race, and in order to do that, UCF is going to have to blow teams out. They're second in the nation in yards per play at 8. Purdue and Wisconsin. Purdue is 4-1 and a plus 16.5 against the spread margin. Best among any team with 5 or more games. UCF, we talked about, they played only 4 games because of Hurricane Irma. Again, if you do like this information, please like us on Facebook. The odds, please like it right at the bottom right now, because, the experts do tell us that will help us as far as search engines. And again, if you're watching the rebroadcast you're all right. There we go. I got a little nervous. David said something about the sound. The sound is working, correct? And then I do see a lot of you were kind enough to give us the thumbs up. You may be a little bit nervous. We did have some sound problems a couple weeks ago, but I see on my screen it should be working. Are you trying to scare the living daylights out of me? Texas Tech versus West Virginia. And by the way, you did, because it indicates that it's working, but I did get some thumbs up as requested, some likes, so the sound should be working. Stop trying to scare me there, David Martin. All right, Texas Tech versus West Virginia. Texas Tech 5-0 against the spread, plus 15 against the spread margin. Rank road dogs with against the spread margin of 15 or better, just 5-11 all time. Colorado versus Oregon State. Oregon State is 1-5 against the spread with a nation's worst, minus 17.2 against the spread margin. Running back Ryan Nall for OSU is probable. He averaged 5.5 yards per rush and 4 touchdowns after 6.5 yards per rush and 13 touchdowns last year. He did miss last week to USC. By the way, this Oregon State, their first game under interim coach Corey Hall. I do know there are some people out there that like to bet that, and I do consider that to be an advantage. When a team really needs an emotional lift, like mid-season coaching change usually does that. As I said, mid-season coaching changes generally do work short-term. There is a, what was your estimate was Washington State problem last night against the California Bears? David, I actually didn't watch that game quite as much. I had it on here on one of my, this computer right here. I was watching it. I did not have a bet on that particular game, and I was doing some stuff, including preparing for this tailgate party. But Washington State, look, they overachieved. Mike Leach has done a phenomenal job. And if you look at the preseason publications, I like to use Stassen.com, Stasen.com, and they do a fantastic job of, saying who the various, it's a compilation, it's a consensus of all the preseason publications, the so-called experts, and who they do think is going to win it. And Washington State had overachieved. It was just inevitable. Again, Mike Leach still, despite last night's loss, should be a contender for National Coach of the Year, but I think they were just overachieving, and it caught up to them. Baylor and Oklahoma State wins at 22 miles per hour. New Mexico State and Georgia Southern. New Mexico State running back Larry Rose III is questionable. 91 carries for 447 yards. The previous 3 years, he had 1,102, 1,647, and 865 yards rushing. Last year, he played in only 9 games, so that is a huge injury. Arkansas and Alabama. Arkansas running back Austin Allen is probable with a shoulder injury, 34 carries. 34 career touchdown passes, including 8 this season against 4 interceptions. He is not expected to be 100%. Oklahoma versus Texas. OU with a nation's best 8.5 yards per play. UCLA versus Arizona. Arizona quarterback Brandon Dawkins not expected to start. 62.3 completion percentage, 5 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Thank you for those of you, and we're going to have the biggest consensus moves in a moment. And in the eyes of some of us, it would be contrarian. But again, if you're watching the rebroadcast on YouTube, please make sure you join us every Saturday and Sunday at Sportsbook Review's Facebook page live. Wherever you're watching, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, please give us a like. Again, the search engine experts say that will help us for exposure and more reason to keep this thing going. The biggest consensus moves out there: Auburn, Northern Illinois, and NC State. And remember to visit me at Joe Duffy's Picks at OffshoreInsiders.com. I got 2 Wise Guy plays led by the Big 12 Game of the Year. 8 college football winners in all at OffshoreInsiders.com. All but 1, including all Wise Guys after 2 Eastern Time, and all the Wise Guys are at 3:30 Eastern Time or later. So if you're, watching this on demand, is that you can get it on demand both on Facebook and on YouTube. If you're watching it on demand, getting up a little bit late, we do have some later plays for sure, and we will have a discount for the night only. If you, happen to have not bought earlier in the day, we've got, I think 4 plays at 7:30 Eastern time, 7:30 Eastern time or later. Join us tomorrow right here, Sportsbook Review. Make sure you join us tomorrow on Sportsbook Review Facebook page. We will have even more fantastic information for the NFL, the tailgate party at OffshoreInsiders.com.
It's a new year, and with T-Mobile, it's not about how far apart we are. It's about how close we can be. So we're bringing out our best deal. Right now, get the iPhone 12 on us on every single plan with eligible iPhone trade-in.
So I can FaceTime with my sister in Savannah.
That's right, the iPhone 12 on us on every plan. All on America's 5G leader in coverage. T-Mobile.
With 24 monthly bill credits and a new line plus tax. If you cancel credit, stop and balance on required finance agreement may be due. Contact us for well-qualified buyers. Qualifying consumer plan required. See coverage and offer details at T-Mobile.com.